Instead of thinking about that end goal, I want to be thin, I want to be fit, if we just think about, I want to feel confident. Well, what do you need to feel confident? You don't need to lose weight. That's a symptom of you pursuing your best life. It's not the prescription.
Hi guys, welcome back to The Vegan View. So today we're having registered dietitian back on, Gracie Pascal. Please welcome her back.
Hi.
Hi.
Back with you guys. Thank you for having me virtually.
Yes,
so
thanks
excited.
for being here. We loved having you on last time. I think our talk about relationships with food and having a healthy one and putting foods in like a good or bad quality and if that's good or bad for us was so interesting. So we'll link that down below for you guys to watch. But today we thought we'd bring this around to our quarantine life and talk a little bit about body image during quarantine.
Absolutely. So I feel like last time was super specific. You know, obviously not everyone has daughters, not everyone is a woman watching. And today's topic I love because it's so relevant to everyone. I feel like if you have had body image days, like negative body image days in quarantine, congratulations, you have a pulse. Like we are all dealing with this right now. And there's so much just fear-based language about like the COVID-19 and the quarantine 15. We're just, you know, bombarded. And as well as there's so many like real societal, social, psychological triggers happening. What kinds of experiences have you guys been having in terms of body image and just your own experiences and struggles in quarantine?
I feel like I've had a really hard time, and I talked to some of my friends about it. I think part of it is just being home all the time and like being able to look in the mirror at yourself whenever you want. And when you're not home all the time, you have distractions, you know, you're going to work, you're out and about and you're not thinking about it as much. But at home, it's like, it just feels so constant, like this constant reminder of what you look like. And also just like, you're less active. So feeling like, am I not like walking enough? Am I not working out enough? Like all of these things that seem to kind of like add up. And then I also think part of it is having more time to watch TV and consume social media where there is a lot of just one body type. And so then you're consuming that constantly.
Absolutely. I think so. You definitely hit on a couple really critical things. Number one being social isolation, we know is a trigger and a defining characteristic of eating disorders. Now you may think like bulimia, anorexia, I don't have that, but we're talking even just disordered behaviors or thoughts where you're pinching, your body checking, you're feeling self-conscious, you're thinking about food around the clock. And we know social isolation is a risk factor and associated with all those things. This is prescribed social isolation. So it's really dangerous, especially if you've struggled in the past. Nicole, I know you have experience with this as well as so many of your viewers, my audience, women, men, everyone. But everyone has some kind of experience that this is really just triggering, you know, as well as the fact that perceived food scarcity we know is a trigger for binging. And once again, a pandemic textbook scenario for perceived food scarcity. So it's not only playing with, you know, obviously we're stressed, we're bored, we're anxious, we're unable to work out in the ways that we're used to. We have more difficulty accessing things like therapy. We're maybe quarantining with family members who are triggering for us in terms of their relationship to food or their bodies. There's just so many things at play here. And then, of course, we have the news also bombarding us with the concept that if we have excess weight, we're more at risk for a severe course of COVID-19. Like, talk about triggering. It's really coming at us from every angle right now. And so I think that we just really have to, step one, give ourselves grace, treat yourself like a child that you adore. And then of course, you know, there's several coping mechanisms and tips we can dive into, but it's just interesting to hear about your experiences and know that we're all going through the same thing right now.
I love that tip about treating yourself like a child. I tell myself, I feel like I say that so much because I kind of have this loving, nurturing side of me. And then I also have this side that's like very, very, that can be really stressed and neurotic. And I always just think of how I would treat and handle a child who was clearly distressed. And I would, how I wouldn't get upset with them. I wouldn't be frustrated with them if they couldn't sleep. I wouldn't be like, oh, you're going to mess up your sleep rhythm, like whatever it is. I would just be like, oh, like, are you okay? It's like, there's just this approach that I think I have for people that I care about that's sometimes different than the way that I treat myself. And so I'm like literally every single day, I feel like I have that picture of like a mom and child in my head, and it helps me so much to be compassionate.
Yeah. And I think, part of that is recognizing just very logically that it's normal to eat differently when your world flips on its axis, right? It's normal to want to turn to something that's warm and cozy and comforting and chocolatey. Like, we're living in fear and uncertainty right now. And from a strictly scientific perspective, carbohydrates are a precursor to serotonin, that neurotransmitter that's like our feel good, relaxed, calm sensation. So it's not only psychological, it's not only social, it's not only biochemical, it's a combination. And it's just really overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people to feel out of control. But I think it's just important, and it helps us give ourselves grace. It helps us treat ourselves like a child that we love when we think about how many factors are really stacked against us right now.
How does that narrative look for you in your mind? Like when you catch yourself being hard on yourself, what is the thought process for you?
I don't know if this is maybe what you would expect to hear. I always go back to who I think is beautiful in my life. And when I think about the people I love the most, I just happen to think there's nothing interesting about someone that looks perfect, especially during a friggin' quarantine. Like, I just find confidence so sexy and so attractive. And one of my favorite aspects of my friends is that we're all completely different, but we're all very confident in who we are, right? I love having different flavors of humans in my life that are able to really just like work what they have. And I think if you come from a past where negative body image consumed your way of life and you went down that dark path of knowing how isolating that place is, then all you want is to be surrounded by people that have found refuge from that as well, and that have really come to own who they are and what they look like, regardless of how that ebbs and flows with years, seasons, pandemics, pregnancies, all the things that happen and that change females' bodies and everyone's body.
Definitely. I think that we get so caught up, especially when looking at ourselves, that there's like one right way to be a human being or to be a woman or to look like or to speak like or to enjoy life like. But the reality is that we all have different aspirations. We all have different things that we value and make us feel good. And that's what makes the world not boring as hell,
Totally. And there's actually a really interesting study that came out this year, and it had a group of people that were either in the overweight or obese category. And it essentially asked them, if you could choose to either lose the excess weight on a purely physical level, meaning you maintain the same poor body image, the same social discrimination, the same fitness capacity, but you've lost the weight, or you get all those psychosocial benefits, but your actual body weight remains the same every time they choose the psychosocial benefits. And so I think it's just something that's really like able to prompt us to look into what are those benefits in that dream life that we associate with the concept of weight loss? And is it actually weight loss or control over our weight that we want? Or is it to feel confident, sexy, able to accomplish hard things? Sometimes with a workout, it's as simple as just wanting to know we can conquer a mountain that seems unclimbable. And when you get on the other side, you're like, damn, I feel good today. So just really thinking about how we want to feel. And oftentimes, instead of thinking about that end goal, I want to be thin, I want to be fit, if we just think about, I want to feel confident. Well, what do you need to feel confident? You don't need to lose weight. That's a symptom of you pursuing your best life. It's not the prescription. So if you want to feel confident, you need to stand up for yourself, have strong relationships, pursue personal growth and master your craft, whatever it is that you're passionate about, things like that, as opposed to get on that treadmill for an hour a day.
I love what you said about the workout being like a mental like confidence boost, because I say that all the time. I like to share my workouts on my stories, but I never want anyone to feel like me sharing those are me saying you also have to be working out, or saying that I'm trying to like get a certain fitness like body type, because I teeter back and forth between like, you know, my whole fitness journey. I've started it, I feel like, to get a certain body type. And it's super demoralizing when that's the only reason you're working out, is to obtain this body type that you have in your head. And you might not ever get there, because your body might not ever be that body type. Like, your body is what it is. And so by switching my mindset to be like, I'm not working out for that. I'm working out to feel good. I'm working out to feel like I accomplished something, and like get my endorphins going and get my adrenaline going. And like, that's why I work out, not to be this certain body type.
Preach. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a saying I love that I was just reminded of this week, and it's essentially the idea that if you are happy for an external reason, then you're still miserable, because all that reason could be taken away from you at any moment. So if you're happy under the strict conditions that you weigh 120 pounds at 5'7" or whatever it is, good luck, man. Good luck with life struggles. That is going to be fleeting. And when it is, you're going to have some real inner work to do. So better now than later, honestly. I think that the sooner we kind of address those things as women in particular, but just as any individuals that feel some kind of value or real societal worth associated with your appearance, it's really important to do the work young, do it early, and just be able to enjoy life thereafter, finding more valuable places to place your worth and your energy.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, things that can be taken away from you aren't, like, appearance aren't really confidence. It's just an external like variable that you're proud of. Something I heard that's really great is like the voices inside your head become your reality. Like, we all know that. But when you hear these voices and you start recognizing them as like being things that tear down your body, it's very like a good way to turn it around is to characterize them as someone you hate. Whether that be real or imagined. For me, I'm like, oh, that's like that nasty lady inside my head. That's not NISHA. NISHA is nice and kind. Like, and it's really good to recognize that. But also, if I'm thinking about my body and I'm tearing it apart, a lot of the times something I've come to learn is that society and the way it's been built has been built upon like white and thin privilege. They want women to be small, and they want women to be like the European like standards of beauty. And so when I start picking apart myself, which I've done for years, which we have been all conditioned to do, I start realizing, I'm like, no, that's the patriarchy, honey. Like, that is.
It is.
Not you.
It is. It totally is. And just think about too, what's really helpful is also realizing like, we're all doing this. We're all hoarding chocolate right now. Like, steady stream into our bloodstream, day in, day out. We all have something that we're using as a crutch. I'm not kidding. Imagine trying to binge eat with a toddler screaming at you. Like, some of us have it worse than others, ladies.
Like, you're a rock star.
Oh my God. Like, just let me do my thing, right? Like, read the room, get off of my leg. I need to be alone with this peanut butter at the moment. But it's like, it's just so ubiquitous is the word. Like, it's everywhere. We're all doing it. It's nothing to isolate for, because there's nothing to isolate about. We're all in this together.
Speaking of chocolate, the Tony Chocolonis, the one that NISHA got me when we were at the airport in Miami, it's a green package, y'all. If you guys see this chocolate bar, you need to get it. It is a dark chocolate salted almond, and it is like super thick. You don't need another chocolate bar. It is so good.
It is so true though. Like, all the chocolate, I'm not even normally a chocolate person that craves chocolate, but in quarantine, I want chocolate every day, and carbs, like all the pasta.
Oh.
Anna, get this chocolate bar. It's so good.
I want it. I like literally was about to Google it. So
I like how we like title this video like "Stop Binge Eating in Quarantine," and we're just like trading trading our favorites.
But actually, that's a good point, because I did want to go back to, I think the narrative can be a little bit confusing, because on the one hand, you want to be gentle with yourself, and yes, you should totally indulge when you feel like that's what's best serving you. And I think it's important to figure out what your intention is. So it's like, are you binging or indulging? Are you eating this because it's making you feel good and it's something that is adding to the experience, and you're really enjoying it? Or are you doing this to hurt yourself? Are you doing this because you feel powerless or out of control? And the same thing with just like any kind of healthy routine right now in quarantine. Like, are you staying up all night? Like, I wouldn't, if I was in charge of a child who needed me, right? Like, I would want to make sure they were getting enough sleep, that they were getting movement, and that they had some kind of structure and like flow to their day that was really setting them up to be happy and healthy. Because I think that sometimes that kind of structure looks like rules, and it can be really rigid, and it can be used as a way of punishing yourself or depriving yourself, but at the same time it can be something that really helps you. So I think the only way to really know is just to be really honest with yourself and check in, whether it's food or health, any kind of healthy habits. So I think that's part of the parent-child thing, and I think that's something that really gets lost in the whole treat yourself narrative, or like self-care narrative. It's not just about binging on pizza and staying up all night and being free. It's like the real freedom comes from doing what feels good to you, and like knowing how to best care for yourself, I think.
Yeah, and that's a really fine line, right? I mean, at some point it's like we want to allow ourselves to feel the fear that we're allowed to feel during this time, but when food becomes our primary coping mechanism, it's problematic, right? So I think first and foremost, we need to figure out, like you said, why we're turning to food when it comes to vices. So this goes for food, it goes for drugs, it goes for alcohol. We are oftentimes using those to numb something, whether it's fear, anxiety, self-hate. But what we forget is that those things are not local anesthetics, right? We cannot efficiently numb the pain without also numbing joy, spontaneity, our relationships, love, all the beauty in life, right? So what we need to do is essentially just allow ourselves to feel those emotions that we are trying to bury with whatever our vice is. So get it out. You literally need to have like an anxiety exorcism, like just word vomit it onto a journal. You could meditate. You could recite positive affirmations or mantras. You could do YouTube yoga.
You can do shadow work, like self-examine and challenge.
Yes.
I think like something I see a lot of bloggers that are doing that I'm like, ooh, that's toxic positivity, is like actually over structuring their day and just and running from emotions by having too much of a plan, because we're human beings. We don't really respond the same way every day, and emotions are like a sliding kind of thing, not like I'm feeling this and then I'm going to feel this.
Yes.
You have to like allow yourself to take that space and like feel all the feelings, instead of, like you said, like anesthetizing with like even structure. Like people who have like compulsions or people who have perfectionist tendencies, I know, have been talking about how much they struggle right now. Like a lot of people in the arts have perfectionist tendencies. A lot of bloggers have that kind of thing, and that is another way of like numbing out. So if you feel like, I know one of the things that you can recognize is if you feel like you're not feeling anything, or you're kind of meh, but you're doing all the right things, it's time to like slow down and feel.
Yeah.
I like that you said that it's a sliding thing, because every day is a little bit different, and what worked for you yesterday or even this morning could be different. So I think that's why it goes back to intention and like figuring out what you think is best serving you in that moment, and just being really gentle.
How do you differentiate then, like structure versus punishment? Because I do feel like I feel like I can eat the bowl of pasta, and then the next time I eat, I honestly probably won't want pasta. I'm probably going to want a bowl of veggies because I just had pasta and I want to have some veggies and like mix it up. But I do see a lot of things on social media where people are like, had a pizza, got to go on a 7-mile run now to burn it off. And I just like, that to me is like you're literally punishing yourself for the pizza. So where is that line really, and like how do you know when you're being healthy about it and when you're taking it too far?
So it's a great question, and it's as we mentioned before, it's a really fine line. But the way I like to think about it is essentially with structure. If we think about something like a meal plan or a workout routine, that is what should be considered like a cast would be for a broken arm. That is something that is very temporary, that is taught to teach you how to fish as opposed to give you a fish. If we teach you that, you know, if you eat this way, you feel good, then you gain some momentum and you'll say, oh my gosh, you're right. When I eat this way and when I do a YouTube workout and when I, limit my screen time, I feel really good. I want to continue this lifestyle. As opposed to when we overstructure, when we ram things into our day and tell ourselves that first we have to vacuum, then Swiffer, then do a HIIT workout, then do cardio, then eat our green salad. That is something that we don't find ourselves feeling energized from. And so you'll know naturally, if you feel good, this is something that you should keep the momentum with and allow that structure to carry through and just give you a little bit of bumpers on your day, as opposed to really overstructuring where you'll feel exhausted. You'll feel like the life has been sucked out of you and just have overall negative energy because of that.
So when people do eat like an entire roll of cookies and then they feel really bad after, what's something they can do to counter that that's healthy and not like punishing?
So the best thing you can do after a binge is go on like life is completely normal. So I'll use an example from my own life, because when I say binge too, I guess I should clarify, like a binge for my life is eating a lot more food than I would normally eat in a night, but that doesn't necessarily look the same for every person. So if I have a night where I'm just snack after snack after snack, I'm just going to the fridge, the freezer, the pantry, rinse and repeat, go back, watch another episode, every commercial, I'm headed right back to the kitchen. We've all been there, right? And I think that you have those nights where you go to bed and you're full and bloated and you're like, oh, I just don't feel good right now. The best thing you can do is wake up and eat a hearty breakfast, because binging is the result of over restricting. So if you find yourself binging that night, it's either you're eating into emotions or you've restricted to the point where you feel like you have to eat with such momentum and velocity to fill those nutrient stores and get those calories that you were depriving yourself of earlier on in the day. So the best thing you can do to nip that process in the bud is wake up and have a super hearty balanced breakfast, then have a super hearty balanced lunch, then have a super hearty balanced dinner. And then if you know the nighttime is a problem for you, inject, like we talked about, some healthy structure. Say, before I get hungry in the nighttime and go reach for an entire box of, Ritz crackers or whatever, I already know that at 8:30 I'm going and I'm making some banana ice cream or something that is good, but also does a body good. Like it needs to be emotionally satisfying, as well as provide you with something to keep you full, so you're not just going back. So something with some water, some fiber, some protein, some fat, something that's just really hearty and that won't leave you going for empty calories the whole night.
A good tip I have too, if you feel like if night times are hard, because I know that a lot of times it's like during the day is fine and then nighttime is hard because you're maybe looking at the end of the day and it's like you want to make dinner, but you're hungry now and dinner's going to take a while. So you start snacking and then you do end up eating dinner, but then you've been snacking so much that you're just like, oh, it's fine, I'll just keep eating. And by the end of it, like you just have eaten a lot more than you normally would, because there was this daunting task of having to make dinner. So a practical tip for me is sometimes I will start dinner prep really early, like sometimes even after lunch, or if I need a break from the computer around like 3-4 in the afternoon just to get up and stretch my legs. You do that too, NISHA? Yeah, I'll just get up and like maybe I'll cut the potatoes and put them on a tray, or I'll even like bake the potatoes or something just so that they're ready for dinner. Whatever it is, like something small that's the prep work, that'll mean that by the time I am done for the day and I do want to sit down to dinner, it can come together really quickly. So I'm not loading up on empty calories that are just going to not make me feel good,
That's such a good tip. Yeah, start when you have the energy for it. Because I feel like dinner, we're cooking so much right now. Like, Ina Garden, who are we? Like, I'm the homemaker of the year right now. But yeah, start earlier in the day when you're like, you have the energy, especially a lot of people like financially do have to cook most of their meals right now. Like it's really good to start earlier in the day, and like it feels good to do something when you have the energy for it, rather over punishing yourself when you're depleted. And like we're all so tired right now. We're processing a global pandemic on a scale we've never seen before, so it's, of course we're going to be exhausted. So yeah, doing things early in the day is really helpful. My dog.
Do you have any tips for people who find that they're eating out of boredom? Because I feel like a lot of people, when you're just home and you're so close to all the snacks and stuff, like what advice do you have for people that are struggling with that?
I think that one tip that really works great for me when I'm eating out of boredom is, it sounds funny and random, but think about food that takes some TLC to prepare. So I think the best example I can think of, as strange as it is, because we don't typically eat out of boredom in the morning, but let's just use this as an example. Think about oatmeal. If you go and you get a pack of Quaker instant oats from your pantry, and you pour some instant hot water in and you mix it up, you could eat that and make that disappear in like a hot second. But if you instead were making steel cut oats, or even just rolled oats, and you were making that in a pot, and you cut up some apples or cut up some berries and threw them in there, and then you were chopping some dates to go in there, and then you drizzled some peanut butter on top, that process, when we make food, I think, as a society, we forget how much we eat with our eyes and we eat with our hands too. If we felt like something has taken time to prepare, we value it more, number one, meaning that we're gonna feel more satisfied after eating that, as opposed to some kind of store-bought commodity that takes us 15 seconds to prepare. So like I said, if you're an evening eater like myself, think about doing something like making a homemade treat. Grab your spouse, grab your partner, make homemade cookies. You could sweeten them with mashed banana, make them as healthy or as unhealthy as you want, but just make sure the process is something you can really pour yourself into. It makes you appreciate it more. It adds a fun activity to keep you from mindlessly, having screen time be a trigger for you as well in terms of snacking. And then your body will value that experience more so, and it'll feel just more like you're treating yourself.
I love that you said that it's an activity, because I say that all the time. I think that sometimes, well, especially right now, people are really loving like the Bon Appetit website and the YouTube channel, and people are really excited about making sourdough bread, and everyone's baking banana bread and stuff, because I think it's so easy to think of cooking as a chore. But you're right, like if you think of it as an activity, just like any other activity you're doing around the house, it's a nice way to spend some time, and then at the end of it you have a beautiful meal or snack or treat that just gives you this sense of home and place that's like really warm and like wholesome.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And food is like art, right? It's like if you were painting a picture or coloring or whatever your kind of anxiety go-to task is, that's just mindless and relaxing and tranquil. Food is art that we eat. I think it's the best thing you can do is learn to love or learn to bake. It's so much fun, and you get to like actually consume and become that. And it's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have any tips for when somebody says something about like, oh, they're doing a cleanse, they're doing a diet tea, they're trying to lose weight, they're not happy with their current weight? I feel like I encounter this a lot, where I have people in my life who will talk about these things, or even like followers will say stuff sometimes, and I find it a really hard situation to navigate on a one-on-one level. Like I have no problem talking about this on a like big scale, but like I teeter between, is it my place to say something, or do I just like take a step back and let them figure out their journey on their own?
I have found more success, I think, in the latter. As a dietitian, I have family members that we'll be at the family reunion, and a relative of mine will be like, Gracie, I have low carb cauliflower tortillas. Like for me, like in my mind, I'm like, dude, that looks disgusting. Like, fuck out of here with the cauliflower tortillas. But I don't say that, right? Because it's a topic too dense to address in the kitchen, right? Like in the moment, not appropriate. So I just always laugh it off. And in my head, I'm like, Gracie, eyes on your own plate. This is your journey. She will come and find the day where she realizes she's craving some wheat, some good old fashioned wheat. But today's not that day. So like, let her journey be her own, and you just go eat your delicious meal. I just always try and kind of smile, nod it off, and just don't let it get under my skin.
And if they're saying something bad to you, set a boundary. Like, You don't deserve to be spoken to in a way that is derogatory towards you.
Absolutely. And that goes back to having confidence, right? Having the wherewithal to really stick up for what you believe in and stick to your guns and be outspoken when you see injustice happening, including if that's happening to you. So I love that you said that. It's kind of ties everything together that I think we've talked about.
Yeah. And speaking of tying everything together, I was thinking of how what you said earlier really relates to the conversation of the pendulum swinging in terms of what the standard of beauty is today. And I think it goes back to what you were saying about what is the goal of being a certain body type? Like, why do you want to look that way? What is that going to do for you? What freedom emotionally are you going to have when you achieve that goal, that physical aesthetic goal? And it's like, that I think the more you check in with yourself and think about that question that you presented earlier, I think that's really where I just think it's going to be so helpful for people to remember that point. Because I just think it's so tempting. It can be so triggering. But if you think about like the deeper, it's like if you just see a body type, whether it's a thicker body type or a thinner body type, and you think, oh, that's what I need to look like in order to be accepted or to be happy or to feel good in my skin. If you just continue the thought process farther and don't just stop there and you think, well, how is that going to make me feel? Why do I want that? Why do I feel like I need to be different? Whatever it is, like, just, I think sometimes we live in such an instant world where it's like we just don't think things through, and I think sometimes it's because we're so stimulated we don't have time to think. So it's like I really loved what you said about that. It was like, really just think it through, and what are you really trying to achieve? I think sometimes it's like the questions you ask yourself.
Yeah, and if I am a proud goer of therapy. I think we all should be. One of my favorite things that my therapist says to me is like, if I'm really anxious about something stupid, like if my skin is breaking out and I'm super in my head, I'm like, God, everyone's going to think I'm ugly. I'm going to look like a fraud because in my pictures on Instagram, I don't have this zit right here. Like all these things. She's like, okay, Gracie, let's play the tape out. What happens if people look at you and you have a blemish? Oh, well, then they might realize that they might think I'm unclean. Okay, and then what? Well, then they might not want to hang out with me. Okay, and then what? Well, then I'd actually have to find people that are non-judgmental. And then what? Well, then I'd be with my people. And like, it almost always ends up like you're not dead in a ditch. You're fine. And in fact, you're probably happier. So if you have anxiety, just play that game. And then what happens? And then what happens? And you ultimately usually find that it's all kind of just this cluster of nothingness. And ultimately, you want to be with people that love you authentically and that you resonate with. And you'll probably find yourself there in the worst case scenario regardless.
One thing that like reminds me of it being nothingness is, I mentioned this in a past episode, but I feel like my entire life, I've always like never really been 100% happy in my current skin. And then I always look back at pictures and I'm like, oh my gosh, I looked so good. I loved the way I looked there. But in that moment, there was things I wanted to change. I was not happy with it. And as you get older, your body just inevitably changes. It's just going to. And people always say that, but when I was younger, I was like, no, I'm going to be like this forever. And then you get older and you're like, nope, things change.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to like reflect on that as well. I feel like a lot of people are in that same situation where they're like, I've never like enjoyed the skin I'm in. And I always look back and be like, oh, I wish I was back to that. Oh, I wish I was back to that. And it's like, but in that time you were fretting about body image issues as well. And so is that not enough to show you that like your frets were nothing? Like you looked great then, you look great now, like just like cut it out.
We need that Instagram meme that's like, we're all just cucumbers with anxiety. Like, you know what I'm talking about? We're all just.
Not that I love it.
Yes. I mean, it's like the most relatable thing I've ever seen. And I saw it like 3 years ago. Still think about it every day. Like, it's just so real. Like, we're all just, it's nothingness. It's hullabaloo, right? It's craziness. But I love what you said. I think it's so true. You're the youngest you'll ever be right now. And do not regret getting old. Do not regret snacking into oblivion. Do not regret these things that are privileges denied to so many. And if forgiveness is on the forefront of your mind, you're going to make it. Your only goal here is to survive this pandemic. We are allowed to feel like we're losing our minds because Like we said, the world has shifted on its axis right now.
Yeah, my mom always says whenever I like call her and I'm like, I'm getting so many wrinkles under my eyes, like I just look so different. And she's like, what a privilege to have been able to live long enough to experience that. And I'm like, okay, Danielle, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, damn it, Danielle.
Okay, I'll shut up. But yeah, it's like all these external things. I know a lot of like eating disorder and body dysmorphia research has been done that it's actually not the food and it's actually not the appearance, but to hyper focus and to keep yourself safe as a woman is to try to make yourself beautiful to society when inside there's something else that you're not like working on or feeling through or haven't addressed. So yeah, it's really like the inside is so much more important than like the outside, and you look fine. Like everyone is beautiful.
Yeah, it's so true. And if you can't love yourself like authentically in the moment, think about just loving yourself as a homework assignment for your future daughters or your children. Really demonstrate first and foremost where they should derive their worth by living that out in your life. So not using shame-based language around your body weight, not calling yourself fat, or language that implies that your worth is derived by your image. So just things like that are helpful, I think.
I love that. I love thinking of that as homework because we talked about it in our last episode that we had you on. But I think a lot of us are products of our environments and what our moms were raised to think about themselves and then what they passed down on to us. And so if you think about it that way as like you're doing this, maybe, you know, if you don't want to have children, maybe you're doing it so that you can be a good example for your friends or like your other family members.
Yeah.
But like
we're all community. Yeah.
Then it feels less like selfish. It feels more like I'm doing this for like everybody.
Yeah. I had that wake up call in high school. I love my friends dearly, but there was definitely kind of a culture of diet talk. And I remember thinking when I finally realized, like, I can't keep this mindset, just like, instead of cursing the darkness, just be a light. See if you can be that oddball that's like, I don't care, I'm going back for seconds. Like, your hungry asses can be grumpy over there, but just see if you can be a light in that darkness. I know a lot of people are quarantined with family right now. That is extremely triggering. See if you're able to be a light instead of cursing that.
I love that.
Well, thank you, Gracie, so much for being here. This was an amazing conversation. You have so much knowledge and insight, and you're such a kind soul. And I'm so happy you were here for this topic. I feel like it's going to be helpful to so many people. I found it super helpful myself. So we will link the episode that we did with her last time down below. It's amazing. You should definitely go watch it. And then we also will link a episode that we spoke with a therapist about. I feel like it's really good to watch in conjunction with this video because we do talk about mental health a little bit in this video, and we go like way more into depth in that video and being kind to yourself and how to self-soothe and things like that. So definitely check that out as well. We will leave Gracie's information in the description box down below. Make sure you give her a follow, go give her some love, and make sure you subscribe to this channel before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. It helps it get seen by other people. Make sure you join our Facebook group, subscribe to our individual channels, and we'll see you next week for another episode of The Vegan View. Bye.
Channel. She just started a YouTube channel. Go.
Yeah. So I'll PS that. Also, go subscribe to her YouTube channel. It's new. Go give her some love. Go give her a follow.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being so real and raw and honest. I feel like right now it's kind of a rare thing to be. And I love that every time I have a conversation with you guys, it's vulnerable, it's from the heart, and we really cover some ground and help each other out, and hopefully help other people out in the process. So thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast, and wishing you guys happy quarantining.
Thanks.
You too.
Thank you, Gracie. Bye, guys.